Pablos. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Interview. It's good to see you again. It's good to have you in here. We'll just start. There's a question of you're the Secretary of State.
Bless you.
Why are you running for this office? Why mayor? Why right now?
Look, I think San Antonio is ready for new leadership. When I moved back here 6 years ago, after living in Austin, I began to notice some things that weren't to my liking, especially as it relates to economic development. I saw us losing out to other cities, opportunities for job creation, opportunities for investment, and I try to get involved. I joined the board of Greater SATX. I sat down with Mayor Nirenberg, offered my services. I had just come off of being Secretary of State, the Chief Economic Development Officer for the state of Texas, traveling the world, promoting Texas, and I thought, well, now that I'm back home, I can do that for San Antonio. But that didn't work out, so instead I went and joined the board of the Texas Association of Business and did that at the statewide level. So we created opportunities for promotion, and now the folks from Greater SATX are part of that, so I was glad to see that at least San Antonio is being represented. So, I felt like we needed to make some changes. Seeing San Antonio from the outside, I was out 5 years. I realized very quickly that we're viewed as an anti-business city, that we've sent signals that we're anti-business to particularly site selectors, which are the people who get to make those decisions for companies as to where they should or should not go. And I felt like we needed to make a difference. And then I realized there's going to be 5 open seats on council. And I felt like, man, this is a really good opportunity to be able to at least change the dynamics, not only of council, but of the way we've been doing things as a city. I realized that we have systemic poverty that nobody's been able to really solve. We had issues with educational attainment that, again, have consistently been ranking below the national average. And so we have all these systemic issues. And I know why we've been kicking the can down the road, and it's because everybody's trying to get elected every other year. And so there's really no room for taking a deep dive into those systemic issues that need to be addressed. So I felt like, well, this is a really good time to give back to the community. I volunteer practically half my time, my entire career here to civic engagement. And so I went around talking to folks, and it seemed like it would be a good idea for us to bring in a fresh perspective, qualified leadership, battle-tested leadership, people who understand economic development, business, and government. And so that's why I'm jumping in. I think I can make a huge difference.
What specifically makes us viewed as anti-business?
Whenever site selectors are recommending to their customers, like a company, where to go, they have a checklist. And the first thing they look at is local government. They want to see if local government is going to be friendly or unfriendly. And we've sent out certain messages to the world that you may or may not be welcome here. There's plenty of examples to look at. For instance, whenever we had a chance to attract Amazon, we chose not to even bid on the Amazon opportunity. Amazon was looking for HQ2, I think it was, or one of those things. And there's examples like the Chick-fil-A example. Right now, we're fighting with Southwest Airlines.
Chick-fil-A
at the airport. We're fighting with Southwest Airlines. And then, if you go around, as I have, and talk to especially small businesses, the vast majority of them are frustrated by their interactions with local government. And so all that information gets out, and we just haven't been able to position the city in a way where we're attracting the right kind of investment. Yesterday, Lou Moorman put out an op-ed, I don't know if y'all seen it, or an editorial piece where he talks about San Antonio having brought in 1 company in the last few years. Austin's brought in 60, Houston 40, Dallas 30. And so there's a reason why we haven't been able to attract. And our local government's friendliness to government is one of the reasons. That's not the only reason, but that's one of the reasons.
So would you say economic development, workforce development is your top issue? Or what is your top issue?
Well, it all boils down to poverty eradication. I want to start the process of tackling our poverty issue, because we really haven't done a good job. When I was born in 1967, the poverty rate was 18% here. Today, it's 18%. So nothing's changed. So the first question we need to ask ourselves is why? So we need to start looking at the reasons why. And I think that the solution is, aggressive economic development. It's really working to create an environment where our community is educated to the point where we're attracting quality investment that will create quality jobs, and those quality jobs will uplift, the standard of living for our community. I don't think that I want to leave a legacy to my children and grandchildren of a poor city, and that's what we are. I mean, we're talking about 400,000 people who live in poverty, and half of those are probably children. And I just don't think that's right. But yeah, economic development is my main focus, but also taking a look at how our government is doing things is the other area. I want to make sure that our city government is really focusing on priorities, basic services. I mean, the role of City Hall or City Council is to protect the welfare, well-being of our people, and that's it. It's really that simple, and I can't figure out why we haven't been able to crack the code on some of these issues like crime. Why haven't we been able to crack the code on crime control, on our infrastructure problems? I just don't know. So I want to take a look at how can we improve the efficiency of government? How can we better use taxpayer money? And how can we expand our tax base and not continue to tax the same people over and over again? And the way to expand the tax base is by bringing in new investment into this community.
Can I ask a question on this?
Sure.
I have lived in some major metropolitan cities, and to me, San Antonio is the least competitive market I've ever lived in.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that there's a pervasive thought that the market makers inside of San Antonio actually don't want San Antonio to grow because it shrinks their share of essentially the economy of San Antonio is dependent on those market makers. So if you bring in other market makers that are more national or corporate, that it shrinks their ability to build their own wealth, right? And I look a lot at a company like HEB with their restrictive covenants and the fact that this is a non-competitive grocer market, and we allow HEB to be the dominant grocer because we essentially protect their business by not making it a competitive. Houston's very competitive with their essentially no zoning. Dallas is hyper competitive because of their strong manufacturing base and the way that they invested in infrastructure. Austin is competitive because of the way that they expanded into technology, trying to capture some of that base of technology out of California. Where can San Antonio, and how can the municipality help create a more competitive corporate 100, corporate 500 marketplace so that AT&T doesn't leave? Like, what are, to Josh's point, are there things specifically that you can do as mayor to keep a company like AT&T in San Antonio? I'm just trying to, I'm befuddled by San Antonio's inability to grow from an economic development perspective. So I'm curious, specifically.
That's a great observation, and let me tell you, that's part of what's driving me, because we haven't been able to attract those corporate giants. We've lost companies. We just lost New Star. They're not staying here for whatever reason, and I'll tell you what, it's a multitude of reasons. Now, with the HEB example, HEB competes all over the state. Walmart's done a pretty good job at carving into their market here. So I'm not really sure what you're referring to with in terms of protectionism, and maybe you know something I don't.
No, I don't know. It's more of this doesn't seem to be as free of a business market as
I see what you mean.
Houston and Dallas.
So let me give you a quick. How long do we have? Because let me give you a quick example. I'll digress a little. So a few years ago, I was sitting on the Public Utility Commission, and the business community from El Paso, which is where I grew up, reached out to me offering me an opportunity to go to El Paso and do economic development. They recognized that they needed strong economic development, so I went out there. And really, I took the job for many reasons. One of those was because I get to hang out with my dad as an adult. I really had never done that, and so I wanted to live close to my parents. I'll tell you, one of those meetings, this engineer came up to me. He says, "What the hell are you doing expanding our economy? Why would you want to grow our economy? Don't you know that if we grow this economy, the national engineering firms are going to come in and eat our lunch?" And that's when it clicked. It's like, whoa, we have an attitude problem. We have an issue here. And in San Antonio, I think part of the reason why we haven't been able to really attract or keep these companies is because of attitude. And I believe that the first thing that needs to be done is to go out there and push back on the rhetoric, on the narrative that San Antonio is not ready for the big companies. Because we are viewed that way. You know, all these little polls that come out that San Antonio is the ugliest city, and you've seen all those polls, right? That San Antonio is the least educated, whatever those polls are, nobody's pushing back on that. And if you don't push back on that, then that narrative becomes reality. And then it spreads, and people believe that. So what I want to do is I want to fix our branding problem. We have a branding problem as a city. The mayor's limited on what he or she can do at City Hall, but it's not limited on going out and selling San Antonio. And that's what I intend to do. A mayor should be out selling San Antonio, talking about the good things, and really, deflating any of these negative issues that are being floated. But going back to your point, what can we do? Well, the first thing is you go back to that checklist that those site selectors look at. They want to know what the quality of life is of a city. That's why I'm fighting so hard for restaurants and bars, is because you can't attract talent if they don't have cool places to be, nightlife, singles life, right? That's one example. Quality of life. The executives that would move here, they want to know what our arts culture is. They want to know what the schools look like. They want to know, if they're going to move to San Antonio, are they going to have an extremely high quality of life? So as a city, we have to improve our quality of life standards with all these things. We have to make sure that all those things are in order. Also, our quality of place, our infrastructure. They want to know that there's going to be ample electricity, ample water, public safety, public transportation, all those things. So we've got to work on all those things, and we're doing a good job on most of those, but we got a lot to go on others. And they would look at workforce. And I think that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks, is that we haven't been able to develop a workforce, a high-skilled workforce, in order to attract the jobs like Austin's attracting. And then finally, our quality of industry, you got to look at small business, because companies will want to know, hey, are there going to be enough electricians to service my plant? Are there going to be enough doctors? And all these things that have to do with small business in the support of industry, all those things fall into place. And then you look at, going back to infrastructure, air service, ample broadband, streets, all those things all fall into place. And that's the checklist. And it's a very simple checklist. I mean, I'll share it with you guys, because I do a little bit of site selection, so I understand what these companies look at. But here's the kicker. One of the most important things as to why we're not doing that is because we don't have a good relationship with our governor. Our governor controls the economic development sphere. All those projects come to him. And then his person that runs economic development gets to decide where these projects go. Now, the governor has just announced the Cybersecurity Command. That is a great thing that just happened to us, and that's an example of how the governor can help us here in San Antonio. TxDOT's is investing a tremendous amount of money here. Those are all good things that are going to allow us to go sell San Antonio. But if we don't go sell San Antonio in a way where we say that we're business friendly and open to business, they're not going to come here. All the other cities are going to beat us out.
I don't disagree with your point about the relationship with the governor, but on the flip side, some of the scuttlebutt around your campaign is that you would be the governor's candidate, and so therefore the concern is that it's like the governor kind of pulling the strings on the city from the inside.
So how?
I'm sure.
I've heard. So let's have that discussion. How so?
Well, you're Secretary of State.
No. How is he going to manipulate me?
Well, I don't know.
Well, nobody seems to tell me how. They say that he'd manipulate me, but nobody seems to give me some specific examples. Look, I'm just one vote.
I think they were talking about in hypothetical, not that it's already happened.
No, that's what I mean is in hypothetical, what are those hypotheticals where the governor can manipulate me? What I would argue is the other way around.
Well, can I ask a very direct question?
Please.
You talk about poverty,
Yeah.
right? One of the ways that people can attain their way out of poverty is through public education and
Yes.
through our public schools.
Yes.
So one way is that the governor could potentially influence you, even though you don't have a say over vouchers versus public school funding. You could be a mouthpiece for that. Do you support public schools, or do you support Greg Abbott's position on vouchers? I think that from a board's perspective, the concern is that some of the rhetoric or talking points from Abbott are pretty one-sided.
Yeah.
Not just one-sided, but tilted to an extreme edge of one side of one party. So those things could have a dramatically adverse effect on poverty in San Antonio.
And how would the mayor be able to impact that?
Because you could speak on it.
And what does that do?
The same thing, well, just a minute ago, you said the mayor can be a mouthpiece and can be a branding agent, so it's just, you can do the same for the
there's
governor.
Right.
Yeah, so I haven't really understood what that means. That I
The
would
question
be.
is for you, how do you, let's flip it around.
Yeah.
To assert your independence from the
Yes,
governor. You know, are you willing to, if we're talking about local control on a certain issue, are you
Yeah.
willing to speak up for local control?
Absolutely, I'm
You know,
representing.
Did you support the Death Star bill, you know, what was it, 2 years ago?
So let me address your issues
See-
here.
see
First of
what I'm
all,
saying?
yeah, I get it. So first of all, I have never, not once, had a conversation with Governor Abbott about me running for mayor. To this day, I haven't had a single conversation with him. I think that's a talking point that my opponents are using to scare people off. Okay. Secondly, I've disagreed with him on many occasions, especially on elections. Okay. When I was Secretary of State, we disagreed on a lot of things. So my job is not to represent Governor Abbott, it's to represent the people of the city. So for me, I'll tell you right now, my position on vouchers is this. Yes, competition is good. Yes, parents should be given a choice, but never, never, ever at the expense of public school funding. Public schools need to be protected from the funding. My wife is a public school teacher. Our kids have gone to public schools all their lives. And I went to private school all my life. So you could see how we feel, and so did Laura, how we feel about public schools. We are 100% pro public schools. The legislature is going to have a great opportunity this session to really show what they can do for funding for public schools. I would not support a vouchers program that does not include guarantees that these public schools are not going to be gutted. But is competition good? Absolutely. Competition makes the consumer win. And also, if parents want choice, they should have that choice, but not at the expense of funding. So, the Death Star bill, it's still alive, and it'll probably survive. So, we just need to see what that means. But as mayor, my job is to push back on things that are going to negatively impact the city, and I'll do that. And I'm not afraid to do it in Austin and in Washington.
You've talked about workforce development, education levels, poverty. So let me just tick through a couple city programs and just to get your sense. Ready to Work.
Mm-hmm.
Should that program continue? Yes,
So-
no?
So the first thing, whenever I moved back, I talked to you guys about me sitting down with Ron and talking about not only economic development, but he sold Ready to Work to me. I even did a video on Ready to Work. And look, it's a great idea, but it just hasn't been implemented properly. It hasn't been managed properly. And it's not just that, there are other programs that really need to be looked at so that we can fix them. And Ready to Work is one of those things. It's a lot of money. I don't think it was intended, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it was intended to train for government jobs, was it? I mean, I can't remember, but the proof is in the pudding. What are the results that it's yielding? And look, if it needs fixing, we'll fix it. I'm all for looking at it and trying to fix it because it is a good concept.
So what I'm hearing is continue it, but fix the problems.
First of all, take a deep dive into how it's performing, what its objectives were, what its performance is, and then take a look at whether it can be fixed. If it can be fixed, fix it. If not, then you move on to other opportunities. But I'm not close enough to it to know. Is there like a death blow to it that it can never come back from? I don't know. But I'll tell you, we need to upskill. We need to train our workforce. All those things are very important for economic development. The question is that the right program? And if it is, I'll support it 100%. It's just that for whatever reason, it hasn't yielded the results it's yielded. I mean, it was supposed to yield.
Pre-K4SA?
Pre-K4SA seems to be a good program, you know. I would support it. You know, families seem to be happy with it. You know, I don't have any problem with that.
You know, I want to go back to, you were talking about things that give us an anti-business perception.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned two. And I'm wondering, are those really the two you want to mention? Because Amazon was always going to go to the East Coast, so that was a non-issue to me. And then you mentioned Southwest Airlines, and if they weren't in this battle with Southwest Airlines, they'd be winning with Delta or American, because you're talking about a limited resource in this new thing. So somebody was going to be unhappy. So how is that a viable example of giving us a negative impression to? I mean, there must be other examples that are better than those two.
Well, look, what I'm talking about is what I'm hearing from these site selectors. Okay, they don't feel like if they come to the city, they'll have the support from our local government like they would in other cities. That's what I'm referring to. And you know, they've cited those examples. You know, there could be others, but I'll tell you right now, if you go to Austin, Dallas, and Houston, you know, their governments are doing a much better job in attracting. And it's not that they're without problems, but, you know, my question would be, what are they doing right to be able to, for instance, Austin attract 60 new investments when we're doing one? What are they doing right? So it's the best practices. You know, what can we be doing as a local government to be able to send that message? The other thing, the other message that it sends is, you know, is our city council unified? Is there unity in city council, or is there discord? They look at those things. They really do look at how our local government operates and the messages that they're sending.
But I think also, I mean, if you look at Austin and Houston, for example, I view those cities as more liberal than San Antonio.
Of course.
So
we're not talking about liberal versus
okay.
conservative. We're talking about just the messages that we're sending.
You don't think that Ron or Julian or Ivy or Bill sent a pro-business message?
Well, look, again, we need to look at the results. If they did, why haven't we been able to attract all that investment, and why do we continue to lose companies?
I'm just wondering what you would do differently then. I mean, you know, like Phil Hardberger, you know, he left with like 87% approval rating, right?
Yeah.
Everybody loves Phil.
I love Phil.
Right. Everybody loves Phil. He's amazing, right? So
I love Phil.
But like, what would you do differently than a mayor like that in terms of trying to recruit businesses? Like, what did he not do?
Well, I'll tell you what I've done,
yeah.
And I'm not talking about what I will do. I'll tell you what I've done, both at my time at the Borderplex Alliance and as Secretary of State, is you're on the road, you're selling, you're talking about the great things, and then inside you're packaging all the opportunities that we have. You know, right now we're not promoting ourselves as a research hub, and we do so much research in this community. You know, it's really it's a marketing approach that we really haven't been able to crack the code on. You know, we talk about, oh, we're great at cybersecurity. We got all these things, but the way we're marketing ourselves is not really working. And really, the mayor should be on the road every day talking to private equity companies, talking to investors, talking to CEOs, getting out there and really selling the city, because that's really the formula that's worked for me. You know, when I was in El Paso, I went to 3 years. In 3 years, we created 20,000 new jobs and $1 billion worth of investment. And that was hard, because at that time, we were promoting both Juarez and El Paso, and that was the time Juarez was the most dangerous city in the world. And in spite of that, we were able to get out there. And what I did as an economic developer, I traveled with the mayor everywhere. I took the mayor everywhere. We went on a thank you tour. We went and thanked all the companies that were in the area, their CEOs. One guy told us, we've been in El Paso for 30 years and nobody's even ever come to say hello, much less to say thank you. So it's little things that you can be doing to, one, show gratitude to those that are already here, and the word gets out. You know, all those folks talk. So we've got to be able to overcome whatever Dallas, Austin, and Houston are doing, and Fort Worth now is really coming up. We got to overcome all that with some keen strategy that touts us as the city that we truly are, because we've got everything. We just have to be able to put it together.
What years? I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask, isn't there a level though, marketing aside, where these businesses ask for things? Is there something that they're asking for that San Antonio can't give them, that Austin and Houston can do?
For the most part, it's those things. It's workforce. I think that, whenever I was in El Paso, that's when Tesla.
It's besides workforce, it's the things that they can.
Like
Like incentives?
subsidies
Let me tell you,
and
so
credits
so
and things like
incentives,
that.
those incentives that you're talking about, those aren't top of mind. Those aren't the ones that are going to bring you here. I'll tell you who uses incentives is unattractive communities.
We used them for Toyota.
Yeah, because at that time we weren't in manufacturing. We needed to attract a manufacturing, so we had to put something on the table. Right now, I don't think, if we're trying to attract an auto manufacturer, I don't think we should lead with incentives.
Not even with like a Navistar. They got
Yeah.
incentives.
Do they?
I don't know.
I don't think we should, though. I don't
Those that are
think
watching, I have no idea.
incentives aren't really incentives shouldn't be used haphazardly.
I don't disagree with you. The community's value should be enough, right?
That's
Can I
right.
ask you a question?
So I would bear with me. What I would tell people when I'm traveling promoting Texas is the incentive that Texas provides you is that you're going to be doing business in Texas. That's incentive enough. It's
But with the. But isn't CPS an incentive? Like as Abbott talks about cybersecurity, it's going to put a tremendous tax on the infrastructure of CPS to provide that level of energy from a server perspective. So isn't that in and of itself an incentive? I'm making an assumption that in a way to attract various large providers of server banks, that there would be some type of energy credit or energy incentive to help offset their cost. So I think that's, I don't want to put words in
No,
your
that's
mouth,
right.
Melissa, but that's kind of what I'm asking for from, like, do you see incentives like that as a way of attracting new business to San Antonio? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Actually, I think that's right. I think we're trying.
the reality is that other communities are using incentives, whether they're those or monetary incentives, whatever the incentives are. What I argue though is that we have to make ourselves attractive to the point where we minimize the need to put incentives out. That's what I'm saying, and we should not lead with incentives. That's not that. Look, here's the reality of it. Companies will play two cities like they've done with the NFL and all that. They'll play you. And so they'll start upping the game. And so we have to, as a city, say, no, we stand on our own 2 feet, and we believe that if you come here, you will be successful. Your city government will be friendly to you. You'll find a qualified pipeline of workers. I mean, we've got to be able to show all those things. And that's the incentive that we should be focused on, not just handing out money. We spent $3 million on a flight to Frankfurt. We could have spent that money on prepping an industrial site, getting it shovel ready, putting a rail spur in there, doing things that are really going to benefit this community from an economic development perspective. Or we could have spent the money just doing flights to Monterey, because that's really our number one trade partner. So those are the incentives that I don't like. Spending $3 million on a flight to Frankfurt was a waste of money, because the only thing that did is that exported our discretionary income to Europe. Didn't attract Europeans as much as they thought it would. Germans weren't going to come here in our summer. We need to be smart about how we spend those incentives, and it really has to do with preparing, setting the table, getting the foundation ready to receive investment, and that's where we should be spending the money.
Just briefly, I know you've got questions, but when you returned to El Paso, what years?
13, 14, 15, and part of 16.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah. And now the Borderplex is celebrating their 12th anniversary or whatever.
The city's big push has been these European flights. Would you continue that push?
No,
or would
absolutely
you
not.
If so, where would you be shifting?
Mexico and Canada. That's it. That's
South
it.
Texas Triangle? Do you believe
Oh
that?
yeah, of course. I mean, I thought we were talking international, but
Yeah.
but no, we need flights to McAllen. We need direct flights to that triangle. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I think that triangle includes Monterey, right? It's,
Okay, well, but okay. So if we're talking about international with a little bit of domestic, absolutely. Look, the Borderplex model that I created is now being replicated in the Rio Grande Valley. They've asked me to consult them on it. Now they're calling it the Rioplex. It's the exact same model that I created. It's basically a binational model of economic development, which is what we need to be applying here. We need to see ourselves as a region. If you look from San Antonio down to the RGV, all the way down to Monterey and Saltillo, that's our sweet spot. That's where we should be spending all of our efforts in economic development. A little bit of Canada, Toronto, Montreal, and that kind of stuff. But really, we need to focus on where the biggest bang for our buck is, and it's with our number one trade partner, which is Mexico.
I assume you're against tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Look, we can't go there, and I understand it's a leverage point. I get all that, but look, we've got to be. And you know what? The trouble that creates is uncertainty. That makes people nervous, even though we know it's for negotiating. It just hurts us. But we have tremendous opportunity in San Antonio with Mexico, and I believe we're wasting that opportunity. We're having all those trucks coming up from Laredo, and now they're taking a right turn on I-10, and they're going to Seguin, and they're going up 130. If you go to Seguin right now, you see a big cluster of warehousing, distribution centers, and manufacturing. They're hungry over there. That mayor over there, she is hungry. And we're going to miss out on all that traffic if we're not careful.
Shifting gears, and something that we're asking everybody. So the mayor is an ex officio member of CPS and SOS.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned CPS. So with respect to each of those utilities with water, are we doing enough, too much, not enough to protect our water quality? The development in Guajolote Ranch that we all written about and has drawn a lot of concern that it threatens the water quality.
Mm-hmm.
And then with respect to the CPS, should CPS's resources, that the money that it generates over and above its cost, because it sells a lot of energy on the open market after it takes care of its own customers, it has excess energy to sell, should that money be used to rebate customers, or should it be used to invest in more transmission and more power generation?
So I sat on the Public Utility Commission for almost 2 years. So I understand utilities. I understand ERCOT. I understand the challenges that both utilities are going through. And I'll tell you right now, we need to protect those utilities at all costs. Those are our crown jewels, especially as it relates to economic development. Like I said, the checklist includes availability of electricity and reliability of electricity. And by the way, for all my opponents, during the time I was at the Public Utility Commission, we didn't have any issues. Okay, so that was back in 11 and 12. We had smooth going. But look, I think SAWS is doing a good job. They just need help, particularly with the water waste that is happening. 20 billion gallons of water are being wasted. That, I think, is an environmental crisis.
They're working on that, though, right? I mean,
Well, no, they're working on it, but they don't have the funding for it.
Right.
We need to go out and get some federal funding to start working on all those old pipes.
I thought they had EPA funding for that.
Not enough.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But
In either case, there's no denying that we're wasting 20 billion gallons of water.
do you have a sense of how much you think SAWS could capture from those leaks, all the leaky pipes in the ground?
I would want it to be 100%. That would be my goal. So with SAWS, we need to make sure that the water supply remains steady, and we did that with Vista Ridge, I think, in the desal plan, and we've done a really good job on the supply side. I don't think we've done an excellent job on promoting our recycled water opportunities for this community. I think we really, what is it, the purple line, or what? I forget what color they call it, but we need to focus on that because there's a lot of opportunity in that arena. On the CPS side,
Real quick,
oh, yeah.
Guajolote Ranch though, so the concern there, to Tony's question, the concern there, that development, it's in the city's ETJ, right?
uh-huh.
Concern is that water, while treated, still has quite a few, it's not treated appropriately to the level, so it'll get.
It wouldn't be, it's not
discharged.
treated to drinking water.
Right,
standards.
so
It's
it'll get
treated to
discharged
it's treated to discharge standards, package sewage plant standards, and it's gonna be discharged, if it goes through, into Helotes Creek, which, because of the karst aquifer, is gonna pretty much go straight into,
Yeah.
into the aquifer.
So could
I would be 100% opposed to anything that's going to hurt our aquifer.
Okay.
And if that hurts our aquifer, I would be opposed to it. We've got to make sure that, we're following whatever standards need to be followed, whether it's CCQ standards or EPA, whatever it is. We can't allow that to happen. Talk about crown jewels. The aquifer is the crown jewel of all crown jewels.
Okay.
Can't do that. So CPS Energy, let's talk about CPS Energy. From what I understand right now, we have a shortage of transmission. But I'll tell you this, what concerns me is this, and I know a lot of folks will probably disagree, but 25% of the ratepayers are outside the city of San Antonio. Okay, and I had to engage with a lot of these mayors from these outlying communities when I was on the Public Utility Commission because they're not getting the benefit that San Antonio gets. And not that they should, because it's a San Antonio asset, but the monopoly is not really a San Antonio asset. The monopoly could be at stake if those communities decide one day that they're not going to put up with this anymore. We've got to make sure that the outlying communities are represented, that those outlying communities are seeing some sort of a benefit other than franchise fees for whatever lines are going through there. We've got to make sure that we work. I want to work with Rudy and his board to make sure we address that issue, that we address the transmission issue, and then also generation with micronuclear. I would be very much in favor of that because it's just a way of supplementing and replacing some of the stuff that we already have in place. I want to work as a board member of CPS Energy. I want to work with Rudy to continue to fortify the utility because right now, I'm not sure if we can keep up with the growth that's coming. We continue to grow and we have these challenges. And so I want to work with the federal government, state government to see how it is that we can really shore up the utility.
To Tony's question, the rebate, so that there's this surplus, $40 million, $28 million, whatever. Should that get rebated back to ratepayers, or should that go into like generation or infrastructure?
Yeah. I think it should be reinvested, but at the same time, I'll say that we need to make sure that the money's being spent where we say it's going to be spent. So I would earmark it because we really don't want rate increases. And if we're going to have anything that's left over, it should go to whatever it is to reduce any type of rate increase. And so I think it should be reinvested.
So you would not allow that money to go to any general funding? It would.
No, I would want it to be specific. I mean, if we're trying to fix a problem, it should go to fix a problem. Because then if you do that, then just rebate it,
And just briefly, one other just CPS question. CPS Energy shuttered the Spruce coal plants. It's tried to shutter some other coal plants, I think.
Probably one or two.
So your thoughts on the energy mix, and what are your thoughts on closing these coal plants early?
Well, it's a tough situation because ERCOT's got to be able to balance and have generation ready to go. So it's tough, right? I would want to see coal plants shut down across the board.
And because of climate change or cost, or
no, it's because of the environment. I think we need to protect the air we breathe, not at the cost though of our economy. So we've got to strike that balance. We've got to be able to coexist, and that's a perfect example of CPS trying to do the right thing. But there are overarching situations that require for the generation to stay ready to go, and it's expensive to keep those plants going. I mean, it's very expensive. If it were up to me right now, I'd like to see gas peaker units everywhere. And I think natural gas, I think, is really, where we need to be. CPS has done a great job with solar and wind. When I was on the commission, we built the CRESP lines out to West Texas. So I was really the only one in favor of promoting solar in West Texas and wind. There were 3 commissioners, and I was a lone commissioner promoting that. And I still believe that we need to have renewable energy, and the prices are going down. So it's more attractive every day. But we can't forget that we've got to have that base load, and it's nuclear right now. And then we need to bring in some gas, natural gas. It's the cheapest form that we have, and we have ways of making sure that the emissions on that, are clean.
Let me ask you a couple questions from our survey. You'll fill this out also, but sometimes there's more nuance. So first question here and some of these you've already answered, but in light of Texas's near total abortion ban, should the city fund indirectly or directly travel to other states for abortions?
No, I agree with you guys. No, absolutely not.
Okay. I'm going to read a sentence to you. Just let me know if this aligns with your view or if it doesn't, okay? The city is not cooperating enough with the Trump administration on immigration. The city is not cooperating enough.
I don't see that. I think both our sheriff and our police chief have been very clear that they're willing to cooperate. So I would disagree with that.
Okay.
It's the law. It's
Okay.
the law.
What do you think of Governor Greg Abbott and Texas legislature's moves to curb the power of cities, so local governments? So in the past, we've seen the Death Star bill,
Yeah.
or sometimes we saw it with texting, right? There were local patchwork of regulations, so it was addressed at the state level.
Well, some view it as what you just said, is curb the power. I view it as regulatory uniformity, which is needed. It's efficient. It creates efficiencies.
Okay. Going back to the Cheryl Scully time, should public safety spending account for more than 2/3 of the city's budget? Should it be capped at that?
I think public safety should account for whatever public safety spending is needed. And so we need to make sure that we fund public safety first. It's required. I mean, that's the number one issue that we have right now is crime, getting crime under control. And I don't know, for whatever reason, we haven't. I mean, there's like 300 spots that need to be filled. Why haven't we been able to really fund that? I would look at efficiencies, both in the police department, see where we might be able to save money and shift it to hiring police officers. But I'm not going to put a cap on anything. It just we need to take care of the problem.
Is crime really out of control? So everyone has said crime is the top issue, but we have a story on our website right now that says violent crime's down 22%,
Violent crime. So you're being very specific. What about the other crimes?
Aren't those down too? Didn't we have a story?
Are they?
Yeah,
Is
down.
property crime down?
I mean, so does an elected official have a responsibility to push back against the perception versus the reality?
Yeah, and here's the thing: is that we got our cars broken into 3 weeks ago. Okay, that's not perception; that's reality.
Yeah.
That was our 5th time, and we just never reported it until I found out that if you don't report a crime, then you don't get the patrolling that you need. So if you have a crime committed on your property, you should definitely report it, because that's how they allocate patrolling. But we feel it. Yesterday we got our mailboxes broken into. We feel it. And really, the perception versus reality, let me tell you what, you go out and you talk to people, and whether it's perception or reality, they feel unsafe. Do you like to leave your laptop in your car when you go into Kroger?
I take it in.
Okay. So,
it's a Hearst laptop.
but wait,
I
wait,
take it in.
but wait.
I put my backpack around Central Market or whatever.
But wait, crime is down. Why are you doing that? You should leave it, right there. I'm kidding.
I could actually answer that question.
Look, here's the thing. We can focus on statistics and all that, but look, we've got to be able to get to a point where everyone in San Antonio feels safe. And right now, that's not the case. Whether the statistics show it or not, that's not the case. And then we look at, oh, well, it's down. Well, it's down from where? You know? And so those are the nuances that we need to look at when we start throwing out statistics. I agree with you. There needs to be a good balance, okay? But we've got to make sure that we're going above and beyond when we're talking about protecting the safety of our citizens. And if that involves more funding, I'll look at it, absolutely.
Let's talk about the Spurs arena.
Oh, can we, on the topic of public safety though,
Okay.
talk about how you would tackle kind of this crisis of these dangerous dogs and the fact that living in San Antonio opens you up to possibly being fatally mauled by a dog, which is unique compared to kind of other cities.
That's a tragic situation. And we need to, once and for all, make a decision how we're going to handle this. You know, for whatever reason, we've been soft on that. We haven't really, we haven't cracked the code on that. Why not? Why haven't we legislated something that prevents that? Why hasn't the city really cracked down on it? Maybe they've tried, but again, going back to the results, they're not there. You know, I don't like those pit bulls. And if I saw a pit bull running around my neighborhood, I'd be very scared. So, you know, what is it? Is it the actual breed of the dogs that we need to address? Is it the owners? What's really happening, and the question is, why haven't we been able to resolve it? And that's what I would want to look at.
I think it's fencing.
Fencing?
I think
Well, what
it's-
if the dog gets out? You know, what if somebody leaves the gate open?
Well, it's also roaming, people letting the dogs out.
So
But
you know what I
if you
heard,
roam,
and I don't know if this is
fence.
true. I'll tell you. I've heard that there's some places, and I'm not suggesting it's just in San Antonio, that people like to have dogs roaming around because they actually protect the neighborhood. Have you heard of that? Is that true? I mean, I heard
not
that, and
heard that.
it seems illogical to me.
No.
But
I came from a neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida, where everybody had, it was kind of a edgy neighborhood, and everybody had dogs, but everybody kept their dogs.
they kept their dogs.
So,
Yeah. Somebody told me that they let them roam so that they can protect the neighborhood. Anyway,
No.
So-
I have a public safety question too. The current city council is addressing or is considering moving through the process of developing a crisis nursery. Have you heard of that?
mm-mm.
Okay.
Nursery.
Crisis nursery. It's an emergency childcare situation.
Oh, for childcare. Okay.
Mhm. That's really- I just-
Yeah, no, I'd be intrigued by it. Yeah, I mean,
The basic premise would be maybe there's a potential domestic violence situation.
oh yeah,
You can
I
place your
see.
kid there.
That way they don't go to Child Protective Services; they instead go there. Yeah, because once you put the children into the system, I'd rather see them in this kind of like a halfway type of situation. Is that what that is? Yeah.
And yeah, it stays in the child would stay in the community
Yeah.
and not be at risk of further abuse or being
I like that.
or being.
And would it be publicly funded, or how would it be
Yeah.
funded?
Yes. So
Well, that's the
it's
question for
been
you.
presented. Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, I'm saying what the
That's
proposal
what she's
is.
asking you.
Yeah.
I'm saying what the proposal is, and then
So the
yeah.
city council has already started the process,
Yeah.
and so has the city. And it would be very unfortunate if that kind of dropped the ball with the new council.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see what's being done already. You know, where is there money already being put into it, and if it's being
It
used
hasn't started
efficiently.
yet. It
No,
hasn't
just in
started.
general on that particular subject about protecting our children. You know, where's that money being used? Is it being used effectively? Can we shift funds to that? I mean, I would have a lot of questions, but I like the concept.
Let's talk about the Spurs arena.
Spurs Arena. I like to call it the City Arena, not the
City
Spurs Arena.
All right, so that tees up the question: should the city fund part of a Spurs arena downtown?
So let me walk you through my little spiel that I give everybody. The first thing, and I think you probably heard this, do we
Oh, I
want
could
to
actually
do we
go
want
beside
to
that.
do we want to keep the Spurs or not? That's the first question. And that, you know, if you have a decision tree, that would be the first question. Yes or no?
We're a yes on that.
Okay,
The
I think I'm
editorial-
yes,
The editorial
yeah.
board's yes on keeping the Spurs.
Yeah, I think we should all, not should, we all agree that that should be the case. Las Vegas wants an NBA team, and I know Austin, and there are other big metro areas with a lot of money that would want it. So let's just assume that we want to keep them. Then the question I would ask the Spurs is, well, what have you done for San Antonio lately? I'd want to know, you know, what has been their economic impact in our community? And I can assume that it's pretty substantial. Aside from the, cultural impact, 5 championships or however many, and all those things that they've done, cultural DNA. When I went around the world selling San Antonio, the Spurs was the only thing people really recognized about our city. And so, I would want to see what is the economic impact of the Spurs. And assuming it's substantial, which I know it is, then we say, okay, well, they want an arena, and they want an arena. For whatever reason, the arena they're in right now isn't attractive to them anymore. Maybe they're not able to attract players or whatever it is, they want an arena. But somehow somebody managed to lump everything together into this Project Marvel. So now we have the arena, and then we have this entertainment district, and we have a bridge and all these things. I think that was a mistake. With respect to the entertainment district, do we need an entertainment district downtown? Yes, because if you go to any other places where they have arenas, there's an entertainment district. The only thing I would say about that, though, is that there should be absolutely no taxpayer money used for the entertainment district. My job as mayor is going to be to create the conditions, to create the environment for private sector investment to come in.
Well, what if that, like we met with Eric Walsh in November, and Ron and some other folks, and he talked about using taxpayer dollars for the infrastructure, like roads, parking, lighting. Would that?
Well, you can use
for the
increment
entertainment
financing.
district.
You can use tools to be able to pay for the infrastructure around it, right?
Okay.
Well, creating a TIF or whatever it is. But what I'm saying is that they're bunching everything into a $4 billion project when that's not the way we should be looking at it. We should be taking a look at the arena by itself when it comes to having a public-private partnership. The other stuff, we just need to create the conditions for private sector to come in and fund it, and they will. If we're attractive enough, which we are, they'll fund it. Now, the arena itself, look, I like to look at best practices, look at other models, and we're seeing, the Moody Center in Austin, that was a public-private partnership. And so then the question becomes, well, what's the split?
Can I ask a question now?
Yeah.
We're almost at time. If you look at the convention center, this is a convention, it's a major part of the economy of San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
The convention center now has been lapped by basically 10 other cities that took a proactive approach to the way that they managed that public utility from a conventions perspective. We're now woefully behind.
Yeah.
If you look at the Alamo Dome, it's a absolute it's the same issue, right? Taxpayer funded, promise of economic development around the area never came to fruition. If you look at AT&T Center, I think it's Frostbank Center now, whatever it's called, same thing. It is in the middle of no man's land. There is literally it is unsafe at night after games when the Spurs go out. So I think the Project Marvel piece to it is an interesting concept because it's trying to lurch the entire project forward at once rather than relying on promises of economic development that in this city for 30 years have never come to fruition. So how do you
Well, that's exactly my point. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, is to diminish the impact or the exposure for the taxpayer. And you have to recall how that whole thing went down with AT&T, with the county stepping in and all that. So we can't really look at that and let that detract from what we're trying to do at Hemisphere. That's where it should have gone from the very beginning. That's where the arena should have gone from the very beginning, because that's where the entertainment district's kind of already built in around there. Now, with the Alamo Dome and all that, look, we can't look back. We got to look forward. We got to take what we have and do well with it. And I think that if we bring in an arena that is in an entertainment district, those meeting planners that are looking at San Antonio for conventions and all that will have something to buy, because they're always looking for the amenities that are going to allow their convention goers to be entertained or whatever it is, right? So I believe that here's the deal. If we enter into a public-private partnership, it needs to be fair, but it also needs to show return on investment to the citizens of San Antonio, to where the thing pays for itself. The thing has to pay for itself. We can't go out of pocket and then, fear that it's not going to get paid. So I would have a stay or pay policy with the Spurs. You know, if they ever leave, you need to have clawback provisions that they are forced then to pay whatever their share was. Look, we're a big city. We need to act like a big city. We need to compete with big cities. And there are, like you said, there are many other cities that are eating our lunch in many respects, not just in this respect. We're a tourism community. You know, we have to be supportive, and having a vibrant downtown is important. Although I'll tell you that whatever investment there is made in this Project Marvel or in this arena needs to benefit all 10 districts, not just District 1 or 2. And the way I would do it is I would segregate funds from the rental of the arena and earmark them, put them into a sinking fund that splits that money into 10 equal parts, and it would be earmarked for public safety for those districts. I think that's the way the entire community can benefit from something that's downtown, and it's a direct impact. Obviously, they'll have an indirect benefit through other things, but you know, we've got to be smart about this. And look, I did it in El Paso. I've already been through this. You know, in El Paso, I'll tell you, they blew up City Hall to put the Chihuahuas Arena there. I was right in the middle of all that. And so I understand about preserving the neighborhood, making sure, you know, things go well, but I also understand the economic impact of that. And that stadium in El Paso has been one of the major reasons El Paso downtown is booming. So we've got to balance, but we can't put this on the backs of taxpayers, and I won't allow that. It's got to have a return on investment that pays for itself.
What's your position on the city's heightened use of tax increment reinvestment zones and their decision to extend the existing zones for 20, 30, 40 plus years? I mean, do you support that as a tool of economic development?
Yeah.
Or what is your position on kind of using these zones to siphon off property tax dollars from the general fund?
Well, here's the thing: is that, you know, if they're doing what its intended purpose was, which was to create economic development, then yeah, it's a tool that other communities, that everybody uses. But if it begins to detract from, you know, other issues, then we need to look at it. But right now, you know, if you've got these zones that are intended to really improve our economy, then yeah. But then you have to look at some of these and ask yourselves, are they working or not? So you ought to be able to have clawback opportunities to where you can, you know, you can analyze it. And that's part of the things is accountability. You know, I've proposed a sunset commission for the city, just like the state, that looks at all these things. And on a regular basis, they get analyzed. You know, you look at them for accountability. You know, ask yourselves, you know, is the legislative intent being met? Is it working? Is it not working? How do you adjust it? We don't have that at the city. And I've been through 3 sunset reviews. I've run 3 state agencies, one of them a law enforcement agency. And I've been through those reviews, and they're very healthy for government, because basically it's a spring cleaning, and you go in there and you take a look at what's going on. And I would do the same thing for that, Molly.
Well, last question. When you look back at San Antonio mayors, who is the most effective mayor in your view?
Henry Cisneros.
Why?
Henry Cisneros brought the community together. You know, that's when I came to San Antonio in 1985. And I remember there was excitement in the air, there was electricity in the air, people were hopeful, there were things happening. Henry was bringing the community together. And right now, since then, I haven't felt that. And I think that what's lacking, especially at City Council, is unity. We need a mayor who's going to be able to come in, check ideology at the door, check partisanship at the door, bring everybody together, treat everybody with respect, earn their respect, and then also create a vision that everybody can agree on so that we can all move in the same direction. And right now, I haven't had anyone tell me what our vision is, what our direction is, and there seems to be situations at council where there's no unity. So I want to come in and work with each council person in a supporting role, not in a lead role. That's not going to be my job. Every council person was elected to run their district, and I will respect that, but we all need to agree on what that vision is, and that vision should be prosperity. I mean, there's no question about it. Making sure that our community is safe and prosperous, and that every family gets a chance to thrive. I mean, it's not that hard. And right now, we haven't had that since Henry. And no offense to any mayor in between, but I would want to get back to the Henry Cisneros days where there was excitement from everyone and everybody felt as one community. I don't know if you were here in those days, but let me tell you what, you felt it. And right now we need to get back to that.